everybody, my name is Mars. You can call me MG if you would like, and today I have for you my May reading wrap-up. We've got some books that are surprising favorites, some books that were surprising not favorites, and everything in between. So why don't we just jump right into it and start talking about the books? So the first book that I read in the month was Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire, and we started things off with a bang. 10 out of 10. I loved this book. I think I read it not quite one sitting, but in one day. I just absolutely fell in love with this world, this whole setup. So if you don't know, this is the first book in the Wayward Children series. It is a very long series. I think there's like 12 or 13 books in it right now, and it's still ongoing, but they don't follow the same people each time. It is a world where you have this home for children who have fallen into portal worlds and then come back, and they have to adjust to regular life again. And so this home specifically is for children who want to go back to their portal world. There is talk of a different home where it's for children who had a bad time in their portal world and don't want to go back, but they still need to adjust to this world again. So this book follows a character who fell into the halls of death, and so it has like a lot of talk about life and death, sort of, but goes so far beyond that. There are all these different types of portal worlds, and we meet all of these different characters, and I just thought this was so well crafted, and I'm always in awe when people can write a novella that is just awe-inspiring from beginning to end, because like that's such a short like amount of pages to be able to tell a whole story in, and it's amazing. I love this. I immediately put myself on hold for the second book in the series, which is called Down Among the Sticks and Bones, and it follows Jack and Jill, who are twin characters, and I love twin characters, so I'm so excited to read their story. We do meet them in the first book. I'm next in line. I've been waiting for many weeks at this point, and so I'm excited that I get to read it as soon as whoever has the ebook hold right now is done. So if it's you, hurry it up. I want to read this book. After that, I was like, why don't I read the next Seanan McGuire book on my TBR, and picked up Middle Game, and this might have been a mistake on my part reading them back to back, because Middle Game is not Every Heart a Doorway. It is so different. This I read because it was a recommendation from Violet a while ago, and I can see why she would recommend it to me. It just didn't work completely in the moment. I thought this was way too long, for starters, and that might be just coming off of a very well-crafted novella. I personally love long books. I think chunky books are great if they need the length. Like, Prior to the Orange Tree, Day of Fallen Night, those books are so long, but they need to be that long to tell the story. I don't think Middle Game needed to be quite as long as it was, and it wasn't like super duper chunky, it was just a little bit on the thicker side. I also didn't quite get into the whole sci-fi aspect, because this is dark academia vibes with a sci-fi element to it instead of a fantasy element. I feel like fantasy dark academia. Wow, that was very rude of that truck to go by. I feel like fantasy dark academia is more prevalent than sci-fi dark academia, but this, it's alchemy based, but not in a way that I've seen alchemy-based stories use, and there's a lot of like time resets, and I'm not the biggest fan of like timeline shifting and like time travel. It's not my favorite type of sci-fi to read about, so I understand how this book should have worked for me, and those elements just didn't come together in a way that did work, if that makes sense. Then I started yet another series, but I finished this one because it's a duology and I read them back to back. It's Anatomy and Immortality by Dana Schwartz. This duology was so good. I was originally only going to read the first book, but I'm like, I can't leave it there. I have to read the sequel and see where it all ends up. And I didn't like the sequel quite as much. I did still really love it, but the first one just ticked all of the boxes. This is another Dark Academia vibes story. So we follow Hazel, who wants to become a surgeon, and this takes place during the Victorian era. I'm gonna be honest here, the like years that the different eras take place, not exactly my strong suit, but Victorian-ish, if not actually Victorian era. So women aren't allowed to study that, but it's also a time period when doctors would buy dead bodies from resurrection men who are essentially body snatchers in order to be able to practice their surgery skills because that's the only way to get bodies at this time. So she ends up teaming up with this resurrection man and they fall in love, of course, and it's just so good. I really highly recommend this duology for anyone who likes that historical period and who enjoys that kind of dark academia quest for knowledge type of story. Then I read The Mary Shelley Club by Goldie Moldavsky, and I did have this physically, but I unhauled it to a little free library. I didn't hate this book, but I just didn't love it. I was very ambivalent towards it, so I decided to unhaul it from my collection, and it actually went very fast. I stopped by that little free library like 2 days later, and it was already gone. But this is a YA horror, it's like a slasher kind of vibe, and my biggest issue with this is that the premise doesn't show up until so late in the story. The blurb on the back of the book, that isn't supposed to tell you the entire story. It's supposed to just give you the inciting incident and the like lead into the second act kind of part of the story. And the last two sentences, the second to last sentence, that like activity didn't show up until about 75% into the novel. The last sentence, that like thing that they say happens didn't happen until 90% into the book. That just isn't how writing a synopsis, writing a blurb, whatever you want to call it, works. Like that's not it. So I like expected all of this to go on in the beginning and then the story to progress beyond what you're told in the back of the book blurb, but it didn't, and I think that was the biggest disappointment for me. It just didn't go beyond in a way that I thought it would because that is how synopses and everything work. That's the point of them. So yeah, I'm willing to give this author another shot, but this book just did not work out for me. After that, I picked up The Lamb by Lucy Rose. Sorry for the shiny cover. This is a library book. I've got a couple more library books in the stack too, so you'll have to forgive me for that. But I loved this. I picked this up on recommendation from Jem at The Creepy Geek. She read this a little while back and was raving about it, and I'm like, ooh, request from the library. And I'm surprised I got it as fast as I did because this is a very recent release. I think it came out in like February, yeah, 225. So I thought people would be clamoring for it, but I guess I just slipped onto the request list at the right time. And this was so good. There's another really loud truck going by, my bad. I guess I picked a bad time to film, but we're just gonna make the best of it. Yeah, this is a story about cannibals. You learn that on page 1, and I think because you know about that horror aspect from the start, the rest of the like horror elements are just so slow and creeping and almost gentle in the way they're woven into the story, and I really love that. That just kind of works well for me. I love a kind of slow burn horror, and this really delivered on all fronts. The ending really shocked me. As things progressed, I had no idea how it was going to all end up, and I didn't expect it to end up the way it did, but I'm glad it got the ending that it has because I think it worked very well for this story. These cars are driving me insane, but yes, The Lamb, highly recommend if it's your vibe. I understand cannibalism is not for everyone, so be wary of that, but yeah, I love this book. Then I picked up Chlorine by Jade Song, another horror novel, and this one didn't work for me the way I wanted it to. I feel like it could have been more ambiguous in its horror aspect. It's body horror, which I love. Body horror is one of my favorite subgenres of horror. I just think it was very clear in like what's real and what's not, and this does play with mental health, so I feel like having a little more ambiguity of like, and it's in first person too, so having more ambiguity of what is the reader or the narrator's perspective and what's like actually going on, I feel like that would have lent very well to the story. Ultimately, it fell flat. It really delivered in the body horror though, so love that about it. I was reading it physically while listening to the audiobook, and that was a very fun combo. I was like actually getting squeamish, which doesn't happen super often for me, but I appreciate that aspect of it. This is another author where I'm not super impressed by this book, but I'm willing to read more from them in the future. I believe this is Jade Song's debut novel, so there's not much to go off of now, but hopefully in the future she signs more book deals and puts out more because I'm interested in seeing how she improves as a writer. Then, for a complete tonal shift, I picked up Dungeons and Drama by Christy Boyce. This is a YA rom-com with like nerdy elements. It is a theater geek and a D&D geek that fall in love. It has fake dating. It's just really, really sweet, and I didn't expect to really love this because YA contemporary isn't my favorite genre, and I'm also not a super huge reader of books that are mainly focused on the romance. I love romance in books, but I enjoy it more as a subplot than the main plot. So I did not expect to absolutely adore this book, but I did. The characters are just so well done, and I loved the nerdy aspects of it. If you didn't know, I'm a huge D&D nerd myself, and I thought that was so cute. There is one thing that didn't make sense. There's a character who uh, like jumps in on this theater thing that's happening like last minute, and everyone's like, wow, you did that accent so well, and he's like, I know, as the DM for the Dungeons and Dragons group, I never get to do my accents the way you guys do, but DMs are the ones that get to do all of the accents. So that little line didn't really make sense, but that's just me being nitpicky as a D&D nerd. So yeah, I absolutely adored this. There is a second book, but it does not follow any of the same characters. The only reason they're in a series together is because it's another nerdy D&D based romance. So I will be picking that up at some point, and hopefully it wows me just as much as this one did. After that, I picked up Watchmen by Alan Moore and art by Dave Gibbons. This, I don't want to say it was a waste of my time, but honestly, I kind of feel like it was a waste of my time. I have been wanting to read this for a little while now. It's been on my radar for years, but only recently have I been like, I should pick that up. And for such a literary touchstone, it didn't do anything interesting to me. I feel like there are a lot of questionable choices in the story that are explained by the fact that this came out in the 70s, 80s, maybe? It's quite old at this point. 1986 is when it started coming out. And, like, it wasn't bad, it just wasn't what I expected from it. I think that one was actually a bus that went by, not a truck this time. I do live on a bus route, unfortunately. Yeah, I just didn't get what I wanted out of this, and I don't know. It took way too long to read for a graphic novel because it is so text heavy. I didn't expect that many words on a page for what it is. I thought the art would shine more than it did. I am still interested in reading V for Vendetta because I love the movie, but Watchmen, I'm probably not going to watch the movie because I didn't like the book. Although there's a movie and there's also a mini series, and I think one is more accurate than the other, so maybe I'll watch the one that's less accurate and hope I like that story better. Who knows? This just was probably my biggest disappointment of the month because I had such high hopes for it, and it just really did not work. Then I read A Torch Against the Night by Saba Tahir, and I feel exactly the same way about this this second book as I did the first one in the series, An Ember in the Ashes, and that is that I'm really enjoying it, but it's like not quite to loving it level. Like, this is a very solid series that I'm excited to continue, but it's not like a favorite series. You know? I mean, there are two more books, it still has time to wow me, but there are just certain elements that I didn't quite enjoy. I reread the first book last month in April, and then we had our book discussion for it because it was the Nostalgia Train book club pick, and I did really enjoy um, like talking about that book with my friends. So I know Anna is already continuing on with the series, which she's read most of it before anyway. This is a reread for her. And Sam and Violet both said that they were interested in continuing at some point. So I'm curious to know how they're gonna feel about this second book and going on, if our tastes are going to stay mostly aligned. I definitely feel like they all enjoyed the first book more than me, and that's probably going to hold true for the rest of it, but overall, A Torch Against the Night didn't do anything new in the series. It just kind of was more of the same, which is good. I liked it. I didn't love it. After that, I picked up Stars Above by Marissa Meyer, which is a short story collection set in the world of the Lunar Chronicles, and I adored every single one of these stories. This was such a good book, and I loved it. I love the Lunar Chronicles, and this was so lovely to pick up and kind of return to that world. I binged the 4 books in the series, plus Fairest, which isn't my favorite. That's like a villain origin story novella. But the 4 main books in Lunar Chronicles I adored, and I also really adored Stars Above. So there are 9 stories in this collection. 7 of them act as like prequels for each of the main characters. So we have the 4 main characters: Cinder, Scarlet, Cress, and Winter, and then their 4 love interests. Winter and her love interest, is it pronounced Jason? It's Jacin. They're like kind of prequel story. They just have one for the 2 of them, but the other 6 characters each get their own. Then there is what is it called? Like a completely standalone story called The Little Android, and it is a retelling of The Little Mermaid, and it broke my heart. I cried. And then the last story in the collection is actually a kind of prologue, or not prologue, what's the one that comes after? Epilogue, that's the word I'm looking for, to the series, and I'm not going to spoil which couple because there are 4 main couples in the series. There are 4 main couples in the series, and one of them gets married. It is not the couple I expected to get married first, but like everyone gets back together to kind of celebrate this, and I just think the way it was done was so cute. I love a wedding epilogue. It is one of my favorite types of epilogues for books that have a romantic element to them. And so, yeah, this collection was so good. I want to get a physical copy to put on my shelf with the rest of the Lunar Chronicles. It was amazing. Then I picked up Whatever Happened to Janie by Carolyn B. Cooney. This is the sequel to The Face on the Milk Carton, which is a book that I've read many times in my childhood and recently reread so that I could get to this one, which I believe I also read this one as a kid. There are things that happened in it that I vaguely remember, so this was technically a reread, and this was just kind of frustrating for me to read. We get to see so many people's POVs, which is great, but because it is so short, we don't really dive into anybody's, not even Janie, our main character. We don't get a lot from her. And there are also just a lot of things that legally would not happen, like even when this was written in like in the 90s, like that's not what would happen. So if you don't know, The Face on the Milk Carton follows a girl named Janie who one day picks up a milk carton at lunch, and the missing child on the side of the carton she recognizes as herself, and things go from there. So in this second book, she goes to live with her birth family that she didn't know existed because she didn't realize she had been a missing child. And I don't know, I feel like all of the characters are not trying to make things work as strongly as they could while also blaming everyone else for not trying to make things work, which is kind of annoying. And then I'm going to spoil this for you. In the end, she goes back to live with the couple that raised her, which are not the people who kidnapped her. I will say that. And like that just wouldn't happen, and it especially wouldn't happen in that she goes back to using the like birthday they made up for her, because in the first book she thinks that she's almost 16, but then she finds out she's like a whole year younger. She's actually not even 15 yet. And like legally, even if like her family and the government and everybody let her go live with these two people again, like she would still have her actual birth certificate dated birthday. Like she didn't just magically gain a year, which makes it especially creepy for the relationships that she's in, because it's unclear if she has her birthday during this book. I feel like if she had her birthday, it would have been like celebrated, but like sometimes she says that she's 14, sometimes it says that she's 15. In her head, she's like already 16 because her fake birthday passes during this book. So she's like 14 or 15, and her boyfriend is 18. And like, that's a little skeevy. There's one point where he even says that, and he's like, well, you're a whole year younger than we thought you were. That's kind of weird. And she's like, no, no, it's fine. Like, I think I'm almost 16. Like, no, girl, that's not how that works. So there are 3 more books in this series, and I have read critiques about them, namely being that there's a lot of inconsistencies because they were published way later and they are set during the time period they were written, despite when these ones are set. So, like, only a year would pass between books, but it would be so technologically advanced because 10 years had passed in the real world. Like, Janie has a tablet, even though she was like 14 in 1990. I don't know. That kind of thing doesn't bother me because that happens in Rick Riordan's books all the time. Like, those books are set in whatever year they need to be set to make the references work, and it's independent of all the other books in the series. Anyway, I don't know if I'm going to continue on, basically. Wow, I'm rambling so much in this video. If you're still watching it, congratulations. You have so much patience, and I appreciate it. But yeah, I'm going to put this in a little free library. And speaking of little free libraries, this is a book that I got out of one, and I will be putting it right back, and that is Colorblind by Sierra Maley. This was a DNF, unfortunately. I don't like to DNF self-published books because I myself am a self-published author and want to support other self-published authors, but this just wasn't working for me. I picked it up knowing that it probably wasn't going to be for me because it is YA contemporary, but I figured with Dungeons and Drama going so well earlier in the month that maybe this one would surprise me, and it just didn't work for me. I didn't enjoy the characters, and I read some spoilery reviews on Goodreads, and judging off of things that other people didn't like about it, I also wouldn't have liked those elements. So I ultimately did not finish this book, but it does definitely have an audience out there somewhere, and hopefully someone will stop by the Little Free Library who fits that audience more than I did. After that, I read the first 4 volumes of Dandadan, which is by Yukinobu Tatsu. I had to consult my reading journal because I could not remember that name for some reason, but I read the first 4 volumes because this is what is covered in the first season of the anime, and I absolutely loved the anime, so of course I wanted to pick up the manga. I didn't expect it to be quite so one-to-one. Like, the anime is completely faithful in its adaptation, at least so far. And so I loved this because I loved the anime. So obviously I'm going to love the story this way too. All of the volumes got a 10 out of 10. It's very good. I'm excited for season 2 to come out this summer. And I will then, after I watch that, probably read the volumes that it adapted. We'll see. This was just fun. I just had a really good time with it. The second to last book I read in the month was The Inquisition by Taran Matharu. This is the sequel to The Novice. It is part of the Summoner series, which I have described in the past, and I hold to that description, as Lord of the Rings meets Pokemon, which sounds wild, but if you read it, you will understand. These cars are really getting to me. I'm so glad I only have a couple more books to talk about. I really enjoyed this book. I feel like I didn't love it as much as the first one. It's just like one little notch below. But I still really had a great time with this. I love Fletcher and his friends and getting to follow them. I feel like the title of the Inquisition is a bit of an odd choice because the Inquisition is really only important in like the first maybe 30 to 40% of the book, and then everything after that is this big quest, and the Inquisition doesn't have a lot to do with it, so that was strange to me, but I really had a great time, and this ended on another major cliffhanger like the first book did, so I'm so excited to get to book 3, which is called The Battle Mage, and I want to see how this trilogy all finishes out. Like, I can't wait. And the last book that I picked up was Grave Mercy by Robin Lefevers, and I listened to the audiobook at the same time as reading it, and is narrated, wow, by Rachel Frawley. I think there are 2 different audiobooks for it, but that's the one that I listened to, and I loved this. I did not expect to enjoy it as much as I did. I went into it thinking I would like it. I didn't think I would love it, but it blew me away. The beginning was a little bit rough to get into because this is historical fantasy and I'm not well versed in the historical era that this takes place in. It takes place in the late 1400s, I think, in Brittany. Yeah, 1485 is when it starts, and then there's a 3-year time skip, so 1488 is the main bulk of the story. But this follows Ismay, who learns that she is the daughter of the god of death, the saint of death. They use both terms. He's like a god, but then when the Christians came in, he was like delegated to just be a saint, and there's, I believe, 9 of these such saints. But she goes to work at a convent, not work at a convent, live at a convent, studying how to be an assassin, because that's what you do when your dad is death. And just her adventures were so fun to follow. The political intrigue. There's also a romance in here, which was so fun. At first, I was like, I don't know if I like this guy, but the more we met him and like learned about him, I was like, yeah, I'm so here for it. I love him. There are 2 more books in the series that follow 2 other girls from the convent, and I'm very excited to read their stories, so hopefully I can get to them soon. I started a lot of series this month, but I'm planning on continuing like 99% of them. I think Middle Game is the only one where I'm not 100% sure if I'm going to continue the series. But yeah, this was a killer way to end the month. Pun unintended. I did not mean that. I was just saying that for fun. But yeah, this was great. Highly recommend if you're into historical fantasy. So yeah, I loved this. I loved this so much. And I also love the cover. I'm gonna stop babbling. I've talked for long enough. So there you have all of the books that I read during the month of May. We had some really high highs and some really low lows and everything in between, which I feel like has been a pattern lately. Like the past several months, I've had books that I absolutely adored and then books that I couldn't stand. So I don't know, maybe it'll level out soon and not be so to the extremes. Who knows? But that is all for me today. If you somehow enjoyed this video, despite my rambling and all of the cars going past, feel free to give it a big thumbs up. You can subscribe to my channel for more content, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye, everyone.